Hey everyone, Mythic ODM here. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop RPGs since 1984, so yeah, a long time. Ran a game store for over a decade, as well as I just completed running a LARP for 11 years. So yes, I am an old dungeon master.
You're old.
For this video, I wanted to share some tips and hopefully some wisdom, but this time for those wanting to get into tabletop role-playing games as a player. I'm glad you're thinking about diving into this incredible community that is tabletop RPGs.
Come on, you can do it.
It is a big, fun step. You're probably nervous, excited, and likely confused as to how to even do it. If you have any friends that are also thinking of playing, you could rock, paper, scissors to see who will be the games master. Once that sucker, or person who has been volunteered as tribute has been chosen, tell them to check out my games masterclass video. If you're not so lucky to have the option with friends, then I always tell new players to check out your local game store. See if they run game days. It could be for any system, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Shadowrun, and so many other options. Now, if you do not have a local game store, check with your school or your local library. You may be surprised that they actually run events. If none of these options are available, then your next step would be to check with social media. Check Facebook, Reddit, Discord, and others. They'll have a lot of looking for groups that you can likely find something that way. You can look up the game creator's website to see if they have some looking for group forums. I know that Fantasy Grounds and Foundry VTT have very active Discords with lots of games being organized that way. Last but not least is to check out professional paid game services such as startplaying.games. Yes, you do pay for the games there, but you likely pay for a movie now and then, and these games usually last double the length for less than the cost of a movie and popcorn. I should know. I run a movie theater as my day job. Okay, you found a group. Now what? As I said in my Games Masterclass video, and this goes doubly for a player, you need to talk to your GM and get some information before you ever throw dice on their table. We call this a slot zero. Some call it a session zero. This does not have to be a session where everyone gets together to actually play. This should start weeks before the main game. In this, you ask if there are any homebrew rules that they'll be using in their game. If you do not know how this rule is different from other core rules of the game, ask. The DM should have no issue explaining to you how the rule differs and why. Ask if there are any specific species, classes, skills, feats, spells, etc. that they're not allowing. Again, they should have no reason not to tell you. You and the DM should also discuss topics that you are not comfortable with, either in-game or out-of-game, such as slavery, sex, abuse, or other topics that can come up in a campaign or adventure, whether published or created by the game master. This can be a very uncomfortable conversation, but better beforehand than in the middle of a game. The amount of times I've read on a Reddit group that player X said this, or DM did Y, and everyone in the group just tells the person to walk away or kick out the offending player from the table is astounding. Here are some of the things that you can do as a player to just be a good player. Be on time. Unless there's a reason for you running late, just don't. You hold up the table for everyone else and it can shorten the session beyond a reasonable rate. In that vein, if you commit to being there, be there. If you're not feeling up to playing, be honest with your group. Trying to get 4 to 7 adults to coordinate their lives around a game is a monumental task. Having someone show up late can stop the game in its tracks, as you now have to be brought back up to speed of what you've already missed. Know your character. Know your skills, spells, actions, etc. You should try to know more about how your character runs than the DM. The GM has so much to do, it grinds the game to a halt if they must explain the simplest of the mechanics of how your character works. Now, that being said, if you're new to the game, the DM expects, or at least should expect, that you will not know everything and they should help you when needed. But if after months of playing, you've still not taken the time to know how your character runs, well, that's on you. Don't try to hog the spotlight. That is more annoying to everyone than you could imagine. The game is a group activity. There are times and situations where you may end up in the spotlight, and that is fantastic when it happens. But when it's time for others to shine, let them. Encourage it. If you're in combat, please pay attention to the game. Nothing is more frustrating than getting into a player's turn and they have no clue what happened a minute before. They're not prepared to take their turn and the game grinds to a stop. This is even more critical if you're on a virtual tabletop. If you're in-person gaming, bring your DM some snacks. Bribery goes a long way. I mean, if they're hosting, it's a nice gesture, which leads to my last point. Clean up after yourself. Put away your gaming gear, tidy up the table. Just try to be helpful to your GM. You'd be surprised how a small gesture like putting your dirty dishes into a sink or their dishwasher are appreciated after a 4 to 6 hour plus session. Now, there are some other things that players can do that just helps the table, and it may seem like common sense, but yeesh, common sense seems to be rare or even legendary nowadays. Yes, that was a D&D joke.
I was saying balloons.
Suspend your disbelief. You're playing a game with wizards, dragons, spells, and other fantasy stuff. Like any fantasy novel, weird things happen. Try to go with it. Don't bring physics or other sciences into your fantasy game where gnomes run around with satyrs casting fireballs and other fantastical things. If you're in a sci-fi or cyberpunk setting, leave your IT degree at the door. Yes, we know the internet does not look like that, but in this game, it does. If you're creating a backstory for your GM, consult with them first. Make sure that it can fit with their story. Most characters start at level 1, so no, you did not vanquish any dragon and then just wander into a local tavern. Your game master may have specific campaign reasons to tell you that you cannot do something. They have an absolute right to say no.
How about no?
Some gamers have bad habits that drive the GM and players nuts. If you have some of these, please try to work on them. Staring at your phone or tablet and not giving the game any attention. Again, I cannot tell you how much of an annoyance that is and rubs the GMs and players the wrong way. Pay attention, especially in combat or other interactive parts of the game. Rules lawyers. Okay, this is where you argue every single rule and just kill any momentum the game has. The worst is when a player says, "Oh, I know the rule," and refuses to cite any reference page, pull it up on the internet, or do any work. One of our standing rules at my tables is if it doesn't kill anyone, just keep going. We can look up the rule later or in between games and clarify. Now, if a ruling is something you believe is very wrong, absolutely, let's talk about it, but should not devolve into an hour-long debate. If the DM and you or another player disagree, then it is on the DM to make a ruling and just move forward.
Get on with it!
In our Pathfinder game, which you can watch on my Twitch channel every other Saturday, links below, we completely screwed up the stealth rules. I've been playing 5e D&D for years and just assumed the stealth rules worked just the same in the Pathfinder 2nd edition. Boy, were we wrong. One of our players knew it, but said nothing because there was no dire consequences. Then between games, we all reviewed it and just realized how wrong I ran it. The player who knew we ran it wrong just said, there was no reason to correct it at the time, and I thanked him for that. Sometimes, yes, you need to challenge the rulings of the DM, but not so many times that everyone just starts to fade. If you're having that many issues with your DM, it may be time for you to talk with them between games to see if you even want to continue with that adventure. If something is offensive or a topic comes up that you do not agree with, you need to speak to your DM as soon as possible. If it cannot wait, do it right then. Pull them off to another room. Or if you're playing virtually, have them pop into a different chat channel and let them know what's going on. Sometimes they may not even think what was said or how it was said came across as offensive. Some people lack social cues, especially on virtual tabletop settings where you may not be using cameras and no one can read facial expressions or body language. Hopefully, it can be corrected and everyone can move on. If not, again, it may be time for you to find another group. Know when to leave a group. If you are not having fun, if the game is not what you want to play in, or there are players that you do not wish to play with, leave. If it is something that you have chatted with your DM, or if it is the DM you have the issue with, and you may have reached out to other players and you don't think it can be resolved, just leave. You can find a more suitable group. It may take some time, but you can. I've seen it before. Something to remember as well as a player. It is your GM's table. It is their game. What I mean by that is they have to have as much fun playing as the player. An happy GM is one who stops being a GM altogether and then no one gets to play. So here are another few things to remember. Try not to blindside your GM. If you're planning to play something odd, or if you watch some other videos and you want to play some overpowered character just because, and all it will do is frustrate your GM, maybe rethink it. Talk to your GM. Open communication is so incredibly important. Things you'd like to do, concepts you want to try, game styles you want to play. Speak with your game master and keep those lines open. As you level up, chat with your GM if they may have suggestions on what choices to make, especially if you're a new player. The amount of communication I have with my Pathfinder group is astounding. We have both a Facebook Messenger group and a Discord channel to talk about character concepts, game mechanics, and more. It is so important when everyone is learning a new system. Be prepared to hear no. If something you've come up with is just not going to fly with your GM, they can say no. You can try to persist, but if they say no, just move on. Lots more characters you can play and lots of things you can do with them. As an example, goblins are my absolute favorite species to play. I currently play a Moon Druid Goblin in an ongoing D&D campaign. My Pathfinder group started to talk about having the entire party of goblins try to run the Kingmaker series. I knew this would be a bad idea, and I would not be interested in running the adventure path with that party of PCs. I just told them very plainly, no. They grumbled a bit, but then moved on to more interesting characters instead of this niche idea that would have grown old very quickly. So being a good player is as just important as having a good game master. Good players make the game run smoother, and it really takes a load off the game master. If your GM does not have to worry about what their players are going to do to annoy them or ruin the game that they have spent hours upon hours preparing, everyone wins, even if the characters die. So as always, thank you so much for spending your time with me in this crazy hobby of tabletop gaming. If you're interested in more content, please like and subscribe below. Click the bell for notifications on new videos. Comment below on the things you're doing and creating, questions you may have, etc. And hopefully I can help you out. But in the meantime, and in between time, that's it. Another Mythic episode. Thank you for watching, and may all your games be full of myth, mirth, and magic.